Good evening there. I'm Dr. Rosie Waller. I'm a rheumatology consultant in Swindon, Great Western Hospital. I have a special interest in paediatric and adolescent rheumatology. So it was right back in January, at the beginning of the year, that I volunteered to be a peer reviewer on a site visit to one of the candidates for the BSR Best Practice Awards. I sort of primarily chose to do this because I'm quite nosy, but actually I came away from my afternoon fully embracing the ethos of the Best Practice Awards. This evening is about showcasing excellence, and hopefully will allow other units to learn from these shining examples. Both of these projects illustrate how a shift in practice to become more patient-focused can lead to truly outstanding care. Neither involve huge resources, and both could easily be transferable to other units. I'm really looking forward to hearing what both sets of speakers have to say. So I'm going to be joined by Kate Druett and Alison Bayliss from the winning project, the Living Well Pathway, and by Shane Clarke, lead for the winning initiative, Reaching Out, Developing Osteoporosis Service for Bristolians. So I'm going to begin by introducing Kate and Alison. So Kate Druett is a clinical psychologist in the rheumatology team in North Bristol, where she's worked for the last 9 years. Alongside providing psychological support for patients, she has led the development of the rheumatology self-management programme at Southmead Hospital, which includes the Living Well course. She's also a member of the Education Committee for the British Society of Rheumatology. Alison is a rheumatology nurse specialist at Southmead Hospital in Bristol. She specialises in connective tissue diseases and ankylosing spondylitis. As part of her role, she reviews and assesses patients in clinic, participates in the delivery of the Rheumatology Advice Line service, and participates in the delivery of the Living Well courses. So now to introduce the Living Well pathway. This aimed to provide patients with information to be able to self-manage chronic inflammatory conditions via educational events. They developed both a one-off signposting event and a 6-session course. They were very holistic in their approach, recognising the importance of addressing fatigue and emotional support, areas which are often under-considered. 95% of patients who attended the event felt confident about managing their condition in the future and would recommend it to other patients. This was an increase in patient service engagement following attendance. This is a truly remarkable achievement. So before I hand over to Kate and Alison, I've been asked to remind you that we will open up the floor to questions after both of the presentations. So do post questions in the chat box, and we will do our best to get through as many of them as we can. But without further ado, I'm going to switch off and hand over to Kate and Alison.
So just saying that I'm going to talk about our Living Well and self-management pathway, and then I'll talk a little bit about what this looks like, and also some of the evaluation we've had from this. And then Ali, in the question and answer session, will talk a little bit about what this looks like post-COVID. So I'll talk a bit more about how this was before COVID. So I want to say thank you to all our team. This has really been a team resource, and thank you especially to our patient partners who've been really involved with this, and this is something that's been evolving over time. So we began this in 2012, I think, was our first group that we ran. So why did we want to think a little bit more about investing more in our self-management pathway? And there's a huge body of literature looking at the benefits and the efficacy of self-management support. So we really wanted to draw on this and think about, there was lots of local need reasons as well. So we're having more people coming forward who wanted support with adjusting or coping with their fatigue. And also we wanted to put in place support to help people earlier on in their diagnosis as well. This is what our pathway looks like. So this is our solution to what we needed. So we have 2 elements to this. This is the first element is our Living Well signposting and information event. And the second element that I'll talk about is our Living Well course. So our Living Well signposting and information events open to all patients who've been newly diagnosed, and they're offered this course, and people can choose a date to book onto. Further down the line, if people are struggling with fatigue or if they're finding they're having difficulty adjusting, then they're welcome to book onto one of our Living Well courses or ask for a referral to a course. And usually people come through our fatigue clinic where we can meet with them, assess what they'd like, and think about whether the course would be most appropriate or whether they might benefit from some one-to-one support instead. So our signposting and information event is open to all newly diagnosed patients. This is a 2.5-hour event. It's a one-off event. People are invited to either bring a family member with them or a friend if they want to. And we run these every other month, so they alternate between a daytime session and an evening session, just to help make this more accessible for people who are working or who might have other daytime commitments. And we have 7 topics that we run through, and a member of each specialty will come and present their topic, and they run for 15 to 20 minutes. And it's a really interactive event, so plenty of time for questions and discussion. We also have a patient partner who comes to talk about their experience of having arthritis and what they've learned on the way, which is really valuable, and people really appreciate that as well. And so we want to introduce the different specialties so people know what resources are available, or maybe what to look out for as well, so down the line if they need any further support they know where to go. And we also want to introduce some of the basics of self-management as well in this course, such as keeping active or preparing for appointments. And our second element is our Living Well course. So this is a 7-session course. So we have 6 sessions and then a follow-up 2 months later. And it's open to all people who've been diagnosed for a year or more. And the same as our signposting session, it's open to people with either an inflammatory arthritis or a connective tissue disease. And we run this, we were running this we had 5 sessions running before lockdown, so our demand had increased over time. And we're fortunate enough to have been able to train up other members of our team to help run this course. So we run this now between psychology, specialist nurses or occupational therapists. And it's quite a structured course, but again, there's lots of time for discussion as well, and time for people to really get to know the other people on the course too. So lots around, those are our topics there, and we spend quite a bit of time thinking about fatigue and also problem solving and thinking about putting into practice changes people want to make. So in general, our aims for both of these courses is really to help provide people with the knowledge and the structured support to begin to put in place some of the changes that they do want to make. We want people to kind of feel more confident in doing so. We also know the benefits of providing social support, having the opportunity to meet others with a shared understanding, and how that can really help with confidence and reducing isolation. And also we want people to help build on their awareness of what they can do or where they need to go in order to think about what might help with their health in order to prevent problems from escalating. So as Rosie said at the beginning, we've had some really positive feedback from this event. A majority of people have found that this helped them to feel more confident. And then all the people who attended one of our signposting sessions said that they would recommend this to other people. And some of the qualitative feedback that we've had from the signposting event, we've had lots of positive feedback. We divided these comments into 3 different areas. So people spoke about how they found the whole session really useful. People really found having a patient partner there to talk about their experience really valuable, and particularly around helping them to feel more hopeful about the future, and also the opportunity to meet others. And generally people found all the information that they were given and the time to ask questions really useful. And this one person said that they found that the session itself helped give them permission to ask questions, which was really great to hear, because I think that really encapsulated what we hope to offer people, just to help people feel more actively involved in their health care. So we wanted to help people move sometimes from this position at the beginning of maybe feeling quite overwhelmed, quite daunted by having a new condition, to feeling more confident and supported in knowing what might help in order for them to live well with their health condition. In terms of our Living Well course, we had 3 quantitative measures. The first of these was the fatigue scale, and overall this showed that people reported feeling that they were coping better with their fatigue, both at the end of the course, which is in orange, and this was maintained at follow-up as well. People also felt better mood-wise. People reported lower levels of depression by the end of the course. And this was maintained at the follow-up 2 months later. So people found that this really helped them to feel better in themselves as well. And we also looked at activation measures, and people at the beginning of the course reported mostly being in level 1 or 2, and this reflects people feeling that they've lost a lot of their confidence, that they're not too sure what to do to help with managing their condition. And by the end of the course, the majority of people had moved to level 3 or 4, which really reflects people feeling much more confident in knowing what might help with managing their condition, also feeling much more actively involved, and also reflecting how people can feel more resilient if at times of stress or if they have a flare-up as well. So those skills are really embedded. We've got lots of qualitative feedback from the course as well, and what we've put together, which has been really great, and some of our patients have put together a video for us talking about their experiences of coming on the course and how they found it and what they got from it. And it's a really lively film, so really grateful for our patients for doing that, and we're going to put that up on our website, and then once that's there, we will email everybody who's on the webinar tonight for you to have a look at if you'd like to see that as well. So just to summarise, our pathway aimed to really help make these courses accessible to patients. So we've got quite an established, regularly running events. Had lots of positive feedback from our team who've reported patients feeling more prepared, and generally this helps to increase satisfaction between both clinician and patient. We found our patient partners to be really valuable in helping us to develop our courses, think about what to include in it, and also how valued they've been when they've been able to contribute to our signposting sessions. And generally, from the feedback that we've had, we know how transformative these courses can be as well. And people have reported going from spending all day in bed to feeling much more confident by the end of it, and really being able to re-engage with some of the things that are important to them, such as getting back to some of their hobbies or being able to go back to work. So I'm going to hand over. So I'll keep your questions coming in because we'd be happy to answer those at the end. And I'm now going to hand over to Ali and Rosie.
Thank you. So in terms of questions, you sort of alluded to it right at the beginning. How has COVID affected?
So COVID at the beginning, obviously everything just shut down. We weren't able to do any face-to-face work at all, so we had no courses running at all for a good 3 months. Kate and I did complete our final part of our course on Zoom with our patients, which actually went surprisingly well, considering neither of us had ever done it before. Patients were willing to join virtually, and hopefully we'll do a bit more of that.
Okay, so I guess following on from that question, how do you plan to develop the Living Well pathway in the future?
Yeah, so everything for the time being, at least until we get the go-ahead to start meeting face-to-face again, is all going to be virtual. The signposting session information is going to go on our website so that patients can view it there. We're in the middle of videoing at the moment, so we're going to have video clips of each of the specialties that would present during the course onto video clips, and we'll end up with that on the website. We need to look at ways of which we can evaluate this kind of way of providing information to our patients. We also hope to be able to hold a question and answer session online once a month, a bit like a mini webinar with our patients. So we'll have a couple of the MDT team for newly diagnosed patients. We've also got the breakout room function on Zoom that we can utilise as well, so that patients can still meet others but maintain safety. In terms of the courses themselves, that will go on to Zoom much in the same way that Kate and I did for our final session with the last group. Only the whole group and the final session will all go on to Zoom. And you can utilise breakout rooms and still get patients to meet virtually that way. So that's how we hope to develop in the future.
Amazing. And finally, any top tips for other teams looking at developing a similar service?
Oh, definitely. So the first thing really is you need to find out what your patients want. Do they want this kind of service? Will they find this kind of service useful? And then I would say get your managers on board, get your consultants on board. It's surprising how much you can do once everybody is on board, and you then get that time freed up to be able to do these kind of courses slightly outside of your clinical area. The other kinds of things I would think about is in terms of your groups online, think about the environment, not only what your environment is, but what your patient's environment's likely to be as well. We've also talked about when we start doing our courses online, giving patients a bit of time to settle in, a little bit of time to use the chat functions, to have a little chat to each other, introduce themselves to each other. And we did also think as a bit of an icebreaker, perhaps it would be nice then maybe to get people to use the chat function and post one positive thing that's happened to them in the past week to start off on a positive note. You also need to look at separating time to be able to do it. It's harder than you think to be able to take time out to do these kind of things. But in the long run, if you can invest that time early, you can help enable your patients to become much more empowered and use your services much better in the long term.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So thank you once again, Kate and Alison, for a brilliant presentation there. Now, before I move on to introduce Shane and the Osteoporosis Project, I need to once again remind you to post any questions in the chat box, and we will do our best to get through them at the end. So moving on to the next project, Shane Clarke is a consultant rheumatologist working at University Hospitals Bristol. He's developed the Osteoporosis and Rare Bone Service within the Trust. He's an advocate of patient-centred service development and spoken at national level about patient empowerment. Shane is active in teaching and clinical research. He's a member of the Rheumatology Clinical Reference Group that drafted service specifications for specialised commissioning and the Southwest Chair of the British Society of Rheumatology. Shane has undergone and undertaken the peer review services across the Southwest. In addition, he has received a BSR peer review fellowship in 2019 and led the first two of the BSR QRS. So it was way back in January that I intended the presentation for this particular best practice submission, and even though it seems like a lifetime ago in pretty much every respect, I do still remember coming away from the day feeling inspired by the enthusiasm and dedication of the team, not to mention the excellent cakes as well. It fully defines both patient-led and multidisciplinary care. The Osteoporosis service aims to improve patient self-efficacy and increase capacity and access. The team at University Hospital Bristol and Weston were recognised for outstanding patient involvement, with the judges commenting it is so clearly patient-led. They use patients all the way through the design, as well as using patient feedback for future refinements of the service. So Shane Clarke will now talk through how the team developed educational events targeted at patient self-management and osteoporosis. This programme has led to a fall in admission to secondary care to hip fracture at the Trust. And if previous form is anything to go by, this promises to be an entertaining, engaging and passionate presentation.
Thanks, Rosie. That's no pressure then. Thanks very much indeed for the introduction. I'm not certain all of it was deserved. I should be giving this presentation with Terry Stocker, who's our clinical nurse specialist, but it's her birthday and she's in Bideford, and I don't know why anybody would go to Bideford for their birthday, but she's just not here. Just like to say a big thanks to our physiotherapy and OT department, and in particular to our osteoporosis volunteers, initially led by Pat Goldsworthy, who is a woman to be reckoned with, and the ex-chair of the Bristol Royal Osteoporosis Society, and also one of my next door neighbours. And of course my colleague Matt Roy and my consultant colleague Rachel Bradley in care of the elderly. This is about our previous service, so that I can give you a context about how we developed the patient-centred education and activity groups. we had a monthly osteoporosis outpatient clinic and a DEXA service, which wasn't fantastically linked to the osteoporosis clinic. And we had a not particularly functioning fracture liaison service. Our physio service was very over subscribed. My colleague Matt arrived in 2013, which was some relief. I think before we go any further, the two important things for developing an osteoporosis service are the benefits of exercise, strengthening people, and ensuring that they don't fall over as much. And also, if you can improve patients' knowledge sufficiently, then there's evidence that they are more likely to take the medication. If they're more likely to take the medication, it's more likely to work. So it's all about concordance, not adherence or compliance. We're up against it in that if people, even with a cursory search, look at the websites, there are either people trying to frighten you or trying to get something off you, or they're trying to sell you something. So they'll worry you about osteonecrosis of the jaw, or they'll be selling you some supplement or other, which isn't our standard alendronate. So we have competitors, if you like. We decided that it was important to elicit some help. This is a picture of Terry from who's in Bideford at the moment, and also Pat, our osteoporosis our ROS chair, and they were crucial. We did develop a fracture liaison service with our care of the elderly consultant. We started copying our DEXA reports to patients and developed a one-stop shop so that patients could come in, have their DEXA, and then see one of the medics afterwards. And we also started doing far more public events through our general practitioners and through the NOS. But we also initiated monthly service meetings with the ROS, including Pat and her colleagues. And that led to the idea that we should survey our patients to see what it was that they really wanted or needed or could cope with. This shows the anonymous patient survey with space for them to answer some questions, but also some pretext. And we got 37 respondents. And in general, it split down into people wanting more information about osteoporosis itself, non-drug treatments, drug treatments, what sort of exercise they should be doing, what sort of diet they should be taking. And in terms of how they would be able to attend these sessions, it was pretty much split 50-50 between those who would come along on a weekly basis for an hour at a time over a 6-week course, and those that couldn't do that but would come along on a half-day course. This is Katrina, Faye and Terry. And we decided, just looking at the 6-week course, that the people who would be eligible for it would be those that have either been confirmed with that we were very that either had osteoporosis or that had fragility fractures. We excluded patients who'd recently had a fracture or that had a number of comorbidities that would prevent them taking part in exercise. We split the weekly 1-hour sessions into two 30-minute roughly sessions. The first bit was led by our osteoporosis nurse specialist, and she introduced the course and talked about what DEXA scans meant and covered healthy living. And then there was another session on drug treatments to reduce your risk of fracture, managing fractures and adaptations. And then towards the end, there was a question and answer session, and they started setting goals. And at the 6th session, which was a couple of weeks after the 5th, they reviewed their goals and looked at the course outcomes. The second part of each hour-long session was led by our physios or our OTs, and they developed a sort of 12-station individually tailored activity circuit. I must say, with with a certain amount of trepidation, but there are no injuries. And they also covered subjects like Tai Chi, Pilates as a relaxation session. And the last one was on if things do go wrong, how do you get up off the floor? After each week, the participants were asked to reflect on what worked well for them. Did they understand the exercises correctly? And would they be able to do them again? Were there things that were a bit too easy for them? Were there any things that made their pain worse? And how would they modify things the following week or later? So far, or up until this presentation, we'd had 147 participants go through the course. The great majority of them were women. The oldest that we had was 91 and the youngest 48, and 82% had a prior fracture. 4 out of 5 finished the course. The reason why 20% didn't, most of them, it was about transport issues and getting in to complete the whole course. There was one lady who fell over outside the hospital after one of the sessions, but she thankfully didn't injure herself. Generally, people were very happy with the course, and there's some of the comments here. We did pre-course and post-course questionnaires asking them about aspects of osteoporosis and management, and also how confident would they feel about joining a local exercise class. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the group reviews that we carried out after the course completion. This just shows the average pre-course confidence in answering questions about osteoporosis and exercise, and then the post-course confidence. And you can see that there's an improvement, and that's all well and good. But what we didn't know was whether the patients over a longer time, would retain that information, and would it make any difference to how much exercise they were carrying out. So if they retain the information, they're more likely to take the tablets, and if they carry on with the exercise, they're more likely to stop themselves falling over. So we carried out an annual review, which worked out to be between 5 and 22 months after people had finished their course. And we found that, in fact, they retained their improved personal knowledge on most things, but their confidence in carrying out exercise had waned to some degree. So we carried out a second annual review, and I think we were expecting about 30 or 40 people, and there were over 70 odd that turned up. And the room was packed out. It had been slightly delayed because the Royal Osteoporosis Society brought out Strong, Steady and Straight. And as we knew that was coming out, we introduced sessions on Nordic walking and balance exercises, and on improving posture, which went down well at the review meeting. We asked the attendees, do you think the information gained about osteoporosis has helped you? Have you continued to exercise? And what type of exercise were you doing? Have you joined an exercise class? And the responses, we didn't get responses from everybody because it was a bit chaotic, I must say. But 42 out of the 44 that we had were pretty positive, and 41 out of 43 said that they'd continued exercising since the course, and one was going to. What type of exercise are you doing in free text, and have you joined an exercise class? And of the 21 that said that responded, 13 said that they had, which I think is probably not bad. Here are some of the written responses. Some people leaving the room at the time. I quite like, I trained to be a Nordic walking instructor age 70 since the course, and I've become a leader of a 55 plus group Nordic. There's a bit at the bottom saying possible scaffolding and decorating. I'm still doing it, but it's been without causing further injury, but I'm more confident to try. I'm not certain I want to follow that one up. And then there was a great response just saying, I just didn't do it. So I think that's probably a no, but in general, pretty good news, I would say. For the half-day public osteoporosis events, these were offered to people on the basis of their DEXA report copies or through clinic. We've run them twice a year, They cover similar topics to the 6-weekly course. They also get a sort of stand up out of your chair exercises with the physio and some input from our nutritionist. We've run 6 of those to date. There were more than 250 have attended. The overwhelming majority would recommend them to others, and it has led to a local increase in membership of the ROS. One of the other spin-offs is that we've got some volunteers who come along to our clinics and help support our osteoporosis patients who have just been given a diagnosis or have been advised on some treatment, and they're fantastic. They're increasingly knowledgeable and amazingly supportive. What does it all cost? This is it all laid out. The most important number is the £35.07, which, if you work out the costs for the 147 people who have completed the course, that's what it costs each. The half-day public events are £116. We didn't cost up how much it would have been beforehand, but remember that the physios were doing one-to-one sessions, and so you could argue that it's much more efficient. Rosie, in her introduction, said that we'd reduced the fracture rate. That's very kind of her, and I think the Fracture Liaison Service might have something to say about that. But if you look over since 2015 to 2018, figures nationally for hip fractures have gone up. In a nearby trust, they've gone up, and ours have gone down a little bit. It would be nice to take credit for just one of those hip fractures, wouldn't it? And if you work out for each hip fracture costing nearly £22,000 on 2013 figures, we could put 620 patients through our course for that same cost. I'd suggest that it might represent good value. So in summary, we've introduced some activity and education courses and some half-day events, which came about as a result of asking the patients what they would like. And we have continued to ask them what works for them and ask for feedback. The feedback seems to be pretty good. It seems that at least in the short term, their knowledge is retained, and a number of our patients have continued to exercise. And we've also got some secondary benefits in terms of collaboration. The costs appear pretty low. Most importantly, this is a great thing. The first commandment of patient-centered care. There's a great article in the British Journal of General Practice about the 10 commandments, which I would recommend for you. But the first one is, thou shalt have no aim except to help patients according to the goals they wish to achieve. So I think we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just run through a couple of pre-prepared questions before we open up to the floor. So firstly, how has COVID affected all of this?
Shut it down. And not surprisingly, our patient group weren't very keen on coming in, even if we could have offered them a spot. We have thought about whether we might do this through IT. I'm not certain again that the group would be interested in that and would take it up. The physio room that we've used has been taken over as an office, and so things aren't looking particularly good. I think this is a victim of COVID, in summary.
Do you think there's any option of moving things forward at all?
Well, we'll obviously have a chat. We've kept our alumni in the loop, let them know what's been going on. It would be, I think we'll need to ask them what they would like to do going forward. So it's back to the patients to ask what they think is the best way forward.
Okay.
Strange time.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Shane. So if I can now get Kate and Alison back on camera, and we'll run through some of the questions from the audience. Okay, so I think we've got the three of you there. So we will start with this question, which I think was to Kate and Alison. So I love this. Any tips for much smaller units?
Ali, do you want to answer, Ali?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's transferable to either bigger units or smaller units. You just need to look at the resources that you've got within your own team. Look at what other people are doing around you who are doing similar courses. Don't reinvent the wheel because you don't need to. And just look at smaller numbers. I think patients will still get a lot out of being able to meet other patients, whether it's face-to-face and eventually when we're able to, or even via Zoom or virtually at the moment. It's surprising how much patients do get out of just being able to link in with other patients who are in the same situation as they are.
Okay, and I think the same question was also directed to Shane as well.
To get the right patient advocates, isn't it? And we were very lucky with Pat, for example. She was interested, motivated, very sensible, and persistent, and that's fantastic. So even if you've got a small unit, if you've got some good patient support, one of the other things that we were thinking we've started to do is to go out into general practice and talk to some of the community nurses, which seems to have worked well, and that also gets your message out to the public. So that might be another way that we could think about expanding.
Okay, there's a couple of questions, I think, to Kate and Alison again, about confidentiality. So the first question was sort of how do you deal with confidentiality in groups? But then there was also a specific question about sort of dealing with confidentiality and information governance using Zoom.
With our groups, we have quite set guidelines. So we go through the guidelines right at the beginning. So our face-to-face groups, and it's similar, I think it'll be the same for our online groups, will be exactly the same in terms of, for our groups, it's helpful if people feel that they're in a safe space so they can be as honest as possible, but obviously within reason, protecting themselves as well. So people are quite happy to go along with that. And I think it helps the whole group feel safer about not sharing any personal information outside of the group. And then I think the platform, in relation to the platform itself, Zoom's, I guess it's had its difficulties. I think a lot's been resolved, but we've also, it's a quite a helpful platform just to have the group, so we can have the whole group on in one space. There's not very many platforms that can do that, so it has been agreed, and I think they've sorted out a lot of their confidentiality issues. And I think there's certain caveats such as not recording, and we have patient information leaflets that we give to people beforehand as well.
Great. And then another question for you, and then I'll pick one for you, Shane, just about the completion rate of your course, and then the outcome measures. Did that include the whole cohort who started the course, or just those who finished?
Shall I split this one out? So our completion rate, so what we found really helpful with our groups and for people to stay on the courses as well has been having an initial assessment, so either through psychology or through the fatigue clinic. And I think that really gives people the opportunity to think about what their expectations are and what they'd like from the course. And then if it helps early preparation work, we can put that in place as well. So that really helps with people engaging with the course. And we found that since then the number of people sticking with the course throughout has been really high. And what was the other question? Oh, the outcome data. So it's only evaluation data. It's not a research project that we've been doing. And so the data I looked at then was for people who had filled in the forms at all 3 time points. So most people actually complete the course. I think the last few courses, there's only usually been one person that's dropped out of the course in the last year or 2 years out of all of the courses. So I think the initial assessment is really valuable. It's worth the time taking to do that too.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then Shane, a question for you about I think the response rate to your initial questionnaire. So did you feel that the group who answered the questionnaire were representative of the whole osteoporosis population?
So that was the 37 respondents that we had. It was back in 2015. I can't remember how long we left it out for. We had it was before we moved our department, and we left the queries out in the waiting area, and then had a big black box which people posted them into anonymously, and I think we left it for a certain number of weeks. So I don't know what the denominator would have been. I think we just looked at it once we had a reasonable number. So I can't comment really on the response rate. There's also a question from Nicola, which I can see, which says, did you develop a crib sheet of top tips for patients to take home with them, including ways to get up off the floor? And I think that our physio and OTs will have the skeleton of what they use for the course. So if anybody's interested, they could just drop me a line, and we can provide them with that.
Okay, I think we've probably got time for one last question, and let's go with so Sanjeev's asked, I may have already missed it, but so this is to Kate and Alison again, but is your service appropriate for people who already have complex mental health issues prior to developing their inflammatory arthritis?
Do you want to answer that one, Ellie?
Yes, so we have had some people on our courses who do have quite complex mental health issues. And I think as long as you are clear in what you're doing within the group, then I don't think there's a particular issue with it. I've been engaged on a course that we did have somebody who did have mental health issues, and I think you just have to balance their needs against everybody else in the group and make sure that everybody's getting the same out of the group. But I don't see why not. What do you think, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I think having quite a structured course, it helps with that as well. And also, like I said before, we've got the initial assessment when we meet with people, and then just think about actually, are they in a place where they can really get the most out of a group? Or would it be helpful for them to do some one-to-one work first and that sort of thing? So yeah, and a lot of people do have quite complex mental health issues as well as managing their physical health conditions. Absolutely. And we also, the other thing we found was actually the people, when we were looking at our evaluation measures, the people who had quite severe depression or moderate to severe depression were the people who seem to get a huge amount from the courses. So I think it can also be really valuable so long as all of those issues are kept in mind.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So I think, as I said, we'll leave the questions there. Any questions that haven't been answered on the chat will get answered. So I think they go back to Kate and Alison and Shane, who will provide a written answer, and that will get sent out with the CPD certificates along with copies of the talks. So any questions will get answered if they haven't been answered live in this session. So the next thing I need to do is to thank Kate, Alison and Shane very much for their presentations today. They were fantastic. And then the last thing I need to do is just to remind you to fill in the feedback survey. So just sort of help inform the BSR. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off and leave it there and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening.
Nice. Thank you to Rosie for hosting this evening, and thank you very much to Ali, Kate and Shane for your great presentations. I hope you all have a good evening, and before you leave, yes, please take part in our feedback survey so we can keep providing you with great webinars. Thank you everybody and have a good evening.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.